Welcome to the Creative Diaries. Today I'm here with Chloe Kennedy. Hi Chloe, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So we met at the Soho Theatre stand-up comedy course.
Yeah.
What made you want to do the course?
Well, you know this story.
I do actually.
Yeah, I was dating, I don't even know, like, can you call it dating? I was dating a comedian, spending a lot of time around his show and missed it, basically. I kind of got jealous and wanted to do my own stuff, so... Yeah, and that's like a really generic story. Like, a lot of the female comedians that I know did the same thing.
Yeah, that was the crazy bit in like the first week, how many people had experience through dating someone or were currently dating someone that was a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, and the discussion around the problem of dating comedians was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did another course and it was the exact same. Like,
really?
Yeah. Like half the course had just dated a guy and then was like, nah.
Oh, that's mad. I don't know what it is though, because seeing someone perform, is a talent that's attractive, or is it like, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
For me, it was being like, oh, I can do that, you know?
Yeah.
And before that, I hadn't been like, oh, I can do that.
Oh, and were you interested in comedy before?
Yeah, like, yes and no. I don't think I'd ever thought of it, even though I do comedy because I do improv, so that is a form of comedy. I remember writing comedy sketches in school. Did you ever have to do like school assembly things? Was that just my school?
No, I never had to do that.
Okay, you never had to do that. So we used to have to do school assembly and they would just give us free rein. I think they didn't know what to do with us. So, and I remember writing a comedy sketch about like old ladies and a bunch of us performed that, and I think it was dire, but yeah. So it's been that, and then I've got a mentor who tried to get me to do like comedy theory. I actually wrote a comedy module and taught a comedy module before I did any stand-up or anything. Yeah, that was fun.
I think it is crazy though when you kind of watch someone, like I was doing like a lot of reviewing, that's why I wanted to do it, and then I was seeing a lot of comedy and I was thinking, oh god, your friends or like whoever. I just went off on a bit of a tangent there.
No,
I was trying to think, why did I want to get into stand-up comedy?
Why did you want to do it other than dating someone?
Oh, well, I don't know. I always feel guilty because we weren't dating at all, really. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what's the definition of this?
I
know someone.
Yeah, I know someone that I was trying to support.
Yeah.
In their stand-up comedy.
Free emotional labour, huh?
Yeah. And then kind of thought, oh, geez, but it did seem like terrifying. That was the one reason I thought I couldn't do it, and that's why I wanted to do it. But
yeah.
As opposed to thinking maybe I could try it.
I think because the course ended up being really good for me, and I think because I was going through kind of like a rough patch with like work and a few other things at the time, it became like a source to like get things off your chest, even though like what I was writing about was actually something different. I wrote a lot of stuff about things that were just kind of annoying me. Yeah, so it's more like a therapy.
That was one thing I loved at the beginning when they were kind of like, what annoys people, and everybody was like, when someone walks really slowly in front of me, or when everybody gets annoyed for the same thing.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, yes, people get out of the way. I need to get the tube. In my defense, there was a train and it was like 10 feet and I just couldn't get around them.
Oh, I hate when that happens. Well, not with that specifically, but there's always this one girl like in the like local area that stands right in front of the bus door. And then you kind of think she's waiting and then it just closes in. Anyway, what? Massive tangent. Were your parents creative? Or are they?
That's a funny one. My mum does a lot of craft work. So my parents both argue over whose genes I got, in terms of no one in the family really has ever ventured down the like theatre route other than me. My granny's really proud because like all my cousins do like a range of things. Like, so my mum does a load of craft work. My dad's an engineer. I don't know how like that has creative elements. It's problem solving. He like has to fit things onto things. I don't know. That's my knowledge of what he does. Yeah, so no, not really. But then like they play the drums. There was a lot of music growing up. But no, like in the grand scheme of things. And then like also growing up in Aberdeen, like they hate creative people out there. Like and I find that from like people who come from like parts of Wales, maybe parts of Ireland, where you come from like a community where it's like really looked down upon being creative.
Really?
Yeah. It's like you're not allowed to do that.
There was one guy I had from Limerick on the podcast, that's where I'm from, and he and he was talking about how he felt like growing up he was a bit of an outlier because nobody wanted to get into acting, you know what I mean? He was like one of the outcasts, and then he moved to London and it was the most common thing in the world, that
Yeah.
suddenly it was shocking.
I mean, what's crazy about where I come from is we actually have like quite a famous musical theatre performer that comes from my school. The drama, Scotland has a really good engagement with drama. Like Aberdeen, where I come from, has like one of the biggest levels of drama departments in the whole of the UK, which isn't saying much because none of them are high. But the notion that you actually go into it for work, or you go into performance for work, is like, it's like you just don't do that. Yeah, and then when you meet other Aberdonians who are like working in the arts, it's often like, you talk about like how you got out. It's like one of the first questions is like, how did you make it?
And how did you make it?
My family had an intervention. Yeah, my sister made me take a day off school. I don't remember why. I just skived school and she took me to the beach and sat me down and was like, don't go study history. I was like, what? And she's like, well, you can go study history, but don't go study it. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was like, study drama. So I did. I wanted to apply for like drama schools, and the teachers told me not to. Thank you for that. They would now. Yeah, and then I went to study at Birmingham. Birmingham is interesting. I hated it because I don't like unis, but now I teach at them sometimes. But yeah, and then went to Central in London, and then now I'm here.
Why did you want to continue on? Did you learn much from Birmingham?
So I have a skill set of, like, I'm really good at performance analysis, which is like a weird skill set to boast about. So I would get like firsts for like any essay that was to do with like Stanislavski or like analysing how people perform, and then I'd like almost fail the other ones, and it was like a weird, yeah. So I learned that I was good at that, and then but it wasn't really for me. And then the course at Central was the course that was like finding myself. I was like, oh no, this is me. Not in an easy way. It was mostly by about the second year where I was like, oh no, this is definitely the right path. But that was a course that was like centered around acting research. So.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. What kind of classes did you have?
Oh man, everything. We would do different practitioners. We would do like teaching training. We'd do like research areas. It's like a really wide ranging course. So you get directors on it. You get like teachers on it. Yeah, and then you get researchers, like people who go on and do PhDs in performance theory.
Did you audition for a lot of drama schools?
No, I just did, no. People always think I did. No, I didn't. I auditioned just for Central.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's like a lot easier to get on than like the acting ones.
Okay, yeah.
It's like not the same. Yeah.
And how long has it been since you left?
I left a year and a half. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's not long at all.
No, I've taken a few gap years. Yeah.
Oh, I graduated drama school a year ago as well.
Yeah, your one was a year and a half long, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really. Well, it was actually quite intensive because it was 7 days a week. If you get through that, because it's 2 rooms, and there was 18 of us in the year, so it was quite like a very specific.
Yeah.
God, you have the opportunity to drive each other insane.
Yeah.
Like,
I've never had. It's really funny when you train actors. I've never had one group. Basically, all groups tell me that they don't get on that well as much as other groups get on, and it's like this weird thing of like everyone assumes that when you're in an acting class like that everyone should be like best friends, and it's like, realistically speaking, if you're spending like 6 days 9 to 5 at least with the same group of people, you're gonna fall out.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. I couldn't spend that much time with my family. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, like
no
it's
other
not
situation.
normal. Yeah. Like you need space.
How did you end up teaching acting? And wait, first off, how did you end up getting the placement at RADA?
So that's through the course.
Okay.
So our external examiner on the course that I did was the head of MA Lab at RADA. In my second year, actually, Ian Morgan, who was a lecturer on our course, then moved over and started teaching on their course. So there's actually quite a big crossover. They do this thing where they don't, I probably shouldn't, it's like trade secrets, they don't let you teach at RADA if you ask to teach at RADA. So I effectively got it because I was just sitting, I cried a lot at that time.
Okay.
And I think whenever they would have meetings about like what I was doing and stuff, I would just be sitting there probably crying at some point, being like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And then started to really enjoy like devising work, because it's like it's a devising based course, it's not classical acting. I love studying classical acting. I love devising so much more though.
Yeah.
So I don't really enjoy training classical actors in the way that I enjoy training devising actors. Yeah, and then they just let me go over and work. So you work on the biomechanics module. They also let me work on the improv module because I was a specialist in improv by that point. They had to sit me down and tell me I was a specialist in improv actually. Which was a funny chat, me being like, no, I'm not. And then being like, you are, just face it. So that was quite good. And then I kind of have a love of that course now and work a lot with people who've done that course on shows, which is fun but hard. And low no pay, sorry. But it's good.
Do you still audition?
I don't really audition. I don't really like auditions. I've sat on auditions. I end up saying I've sat on some dodgy auditions as well in my time. I find auditions to be really fake. I always argue that there are some benefits to nepotism, and I like working with people who I know because I know what I'm getting involved with. Not that there isn't a benefit sometimes to working with people who can challenge you and who you don't know. So no, I don't really audition.
Okay. So what are like the main do's and don'ts when you watch an audition?
So each drama school is different and it has its own kind of feeling. So if you are going into a drama school and you're like, this vibe is not me, I would suggest listening to it. That's not always the case, but it's definitely something that the teachers notice. Because even though I haven't taught at like every single one, I know quite a lot of teachers at different ones, just by dint of the teachers when you teach. That was stupid. Anyway, yeah, so we get things like YouTubers coming in and thinking that they're going to get into a degree straight away because they're semi-famous. It doesn't really work like that in drama schools. Certain drama schools look for different things. So at RADA they talk a lot about like the journey of the performer, and I often felt they're looking for people who have quite a long-term approach to acting, maybe less than a short term. And I think that shows in the BA course because they have quite a big age range in comparison to a lot of other courses. There's a course called CDT at Central, and they specifically look for like dyslexics and dyspraxic performers, people who are used to and need to work in collaboration but do it differently. I know lots of musical theatre auditions, they're not necessarily, they're often looking for attitude and they're looking for ability to hit certain things in a certain way as opposed to necessarily getting it right. That's quite a big part of that. Yeah, so it kind of depends. There's also an engagement with maturity and like just getting on with the course. So it's not a main thing, but you do notice if you're sitting in an audition how the people bring someone in. So if the people on the course, because often it's the people who are on the course will ferry people around during the auditions. So if they're bringing in someone who just they seem to mesh and they seem to get on with, then they're probably going to get on well with the rest of the course. Like, it's not a big thing, but it's just tiny things that you notice. And general maturity, like you get people auditioning who are good, but they're not there maturity-wise. Yeah, and then you get people... I've seen some incredible performers audition and they don't get let in. And I question why, but sometimes they think that this person's not ready yet. They won't handle how difficult it can be sometimes. Sorry, went on.
No, that's amazing, because that's kind of what it's about anyway, like inspiring, people that want to get into acting. And what advice would you give them?
Acting's funny. Training acting's a really funny thing because you learn a lot that's just not kind of general knowledge. I've trained a lot of people who think that they're actors and they inherently hate what acting actually is. They hate becoming someone else constantly. They hate the boredom that sometimes comes from that because, again, it's that thing of like when you're doing something 6 days a week for 9 to 5, it can get boring sometimes, and they don't have an interest in engaging in the characterization. And what you find is that they're actually a writer or they're a stand-up comedian or they're an improviser, but acting was the thing that they could connect with at that point in time. And they should be there. It's not that they shouldn't. So that's an interesting thing of sometimes you're training people to act and it's like you are fundamentally not an actor because it's in your being. You don't want it. And you want to do other kinds of performance. What a lot of people don't understand about acting training as well is that we tend to refer to acting as being like one thing. And it's not. So like if you're studying like natural, what we phrase as being naturalistic acting, that changes quite a lot. So if you're to look at like what seems to be natural from like 10 years ago, maybe it's more obvious if it's like 50 years ago, they thought that was naturalistic acting and we look back on it now and we're like, what is that? Like that's not. And if you go across different continents, so the way Americans act and the way that Canadians act and Australians in the UK, because the Western people do kind of connect up, we act in different ways, and then we each complain about the other continent being like, oh, they're really like, a lot of people find our acting to be really like boring. Like Americans coming over, they're just like, guys, this is really boring stuff. Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah. So finding as an actor coming in, like what you need to understand is that your acting process is yours. Like you get a lot of teachers who are like, this is the way to act, and it doesn't really work like that. And it's often in relation to so you can connect acting theory to how people process information. So if they're like a list learner or they're dyslexic or they're dyspraxic, will impact their acting. And a lot of them doing really well as an actor is actually about just getting them in the right context for performing. So getting them on a course where they tend to teach in the way that this person tends to act is actually much more important than being at like the biggest schools sometimes, which people don't realise.
Yeah, I looked out for that a little when I was auditioning. So I specifically went for a drama school that let like different age ranges in because I don't know, I was only 21 at the time, but I wanted to go somewhere with a bit of a mature crowd because I definitely didn't want like a bitchy kind of drama school year when you're going to be spending all this time with people.
I mean, it's weird. You'll get years where they're really bitchy and years where they're really not, and sometimes teachers will turn around and be like, what happened to this year group? Like, we don't know. But yeah, no, I definitely think there's a benefit to having a age range and things like that,
Yeah. Are you teaching anywhere at the moment?
No, not really. I've got a teaching job coming up. I tend to get kind of teaching jobs where someone needs to be filled in. I'm right down at the very bottom of the teaching pile.
I don't know, because these are like pretty big places, you know, that you have in your CV now.
Yeah, they are. I think they look more impressive than like you're going in and covering a class and stuff, or you'll be like on their books as like a visiting teacher type thing. So
and has there been anyone that's stood out to you? Like my drama school teacher's claim to fame, I don't know. Is
everyone's got one.
Yeah, is that he taught Tom Hardy.
Oh, did he? Yeah. All drama teachers have a claim to fame. Like all of them. It's very hard to not have one. There's a girl I remember in an audition that I did who didn't get in, and I thought she was phenomenal. And I know she hadn't gotten into somewhere else because she told me. But I really love her style of acting. So with the people who become successful actors is often one, not necessarily who people would expect. Sometimes it really is who people expect, but it's because of them being character-wise a certain way or something. Yeah, in terms of people who stand out, it often surprises you. So I've ended up working more with people who I wouldn't expect to when I was teaching them afterwards, but there was something there. So like maybe when I was teaching them they were going through something and you could tell that there was something off in the classroom, but there was a maturity of their behaviour, and then I like that. So it's not as straightforward as it sounds. Yeah.
Okay. When you were talking about how people have to act, I don't know, is that the way you felt about stand-up? At what point did you just want to kind of make the leap? Had you performed any stand-up before the Soho Theatre course?
Yeah, I did. I did a Birmingham Rep with Joe Lycett.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's insane.
Yeah, that was just me getting lucky, and then I dined out on that story for about a year afterwards.
Well, tell me the story.
No, it was just a course. It was a course with a company called Women in Theatre. One of the people running the course is a comedian called Karen, and she's quite good friends with Joe. And he was on the up, I think, by that point.
Yeah.
And so he just kind of compared, and they just got lucky with the Birmingham Rep slot as well. That was a funny time though. So I was living in a flat with the president of the Comedy Society in Birmingham, because I was my flatmate, and they were all comedy girls that I was living with. So that was kind of coming into effect. I also then later, because of that, do you know the guy who plays? This is name dropping. The guy who plays Ron Weasley's dad in Harry Potter.
Well, yeah, I don't know his name.
Yeah, Mark something. Because of that course, like 2 weeks later, I ended up in a bar singing karaoke with him and like a bunch of other actors and like one guy from EastEnders, and there was a lot of wine.
That's mad, like.
Yeah, and then he came in to give a talk the next day, and I was like trying not to throw up in the back of the
What song did you sing? Can you remember?
No, I can't remember. I was.
Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
No.
Yeah, I love like We Didn't Start the Fire.
I feel like I spoke about me a lot.
What?
Why do you want to do stand-up?
Oh God, why? That's a good question. I was like, after I finished drama school, it just was so. I was a bit traumatized after drama school. I think I really struggled to audition for things. I kind of like struggled a lot with confidence after. I ended up writing a lot and then meeting people through reviewing for Radio Haha, and then I don't know what point. Oh, there was a point where I kind of thought like I should try this, because with stand-up, if you want, you can literally be on the stage every night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas with acting, you get like something small or maybe something big, but never consistently, whereas you can perform stand-up consistently every week.
Acting can really reduce your autonomy as a performer. If you're constantly being, you know, your voice gets reduced into being this kind of role, this kind of character. So we often tell them, and like we use like improv so that they can kind of create their own narratives. I felt like stand-up being a therapy was kind of the same for me. It was like getting my voice out there again.
It's also just a bit of a struggle with being Irish, which I think is crazy. Like when I was acting, I'm still not amazing at accents, but the consensus oftentimes I was like, always in Ireland we don't really have like a major class thing, but then I moved to England and it's so crazy, the whole class thing. And auditions, I was getting like the maid, I was always getting oh, you can play the maid in this play, and then if you were in Downton Abbey you'd definitely below, like you'd be in the basement. Or what was the last one? The last one was I applied for like a lead as and I ended up getting, instead he went, you know, you're perfect for this other part. You're going to play the girlfriend secretly has a massive drug addiction. Like, so I always got like really, I don't know, dodgy characters.
I have a friend who sometimes she's from Newcastle, and she'll sometimes go into an audition and put on an RP accent if she's getting the vibe that this is like.
I think I'll start doing that, because Irish comedy then on the other hand, it's like a complete scale. Like if people think you're
Irish, then you're funny.
It's almost like tables are turned from acting to comedy just on where you're from.
But I wouldn't say that your comedy was stereotypically Irish, weirdly, even though you talk about being Irish in it.
Oh, thank you. I don't know, is that a compliment?
No, definitely, yeah.
Yay, thank you.
Definitely. No, it's very uniquely you comedy, I've found when I was watching it.
Thank you.
Because you kind of have this quite smart but quite withheld thing. And I would character it, like if I was going to be really stereotypical and kind of rude with it, I would be like, Irish comedians in my head would often be quite loud and open, but yours is like it's like a smart but quite like a held. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Yay.
Can't turn off but
that was the thing, when I first friggin' started that course, I was like, oh well, it's so many ideas, because I didn't care that much. I was just trying it out. Now I've finished it, I can't come up with any ideas, because I can actually be like, oh no, you might have to perform that, or you know, now I have so many limitations on myself. I
like being in an environment with other people when I have to do work like that, though.
Yeah.
And I think for me, having that weekly meet-up was like, it's that thing around, like, I like feeling guilty to work. That's really bad, but I just, like, if I have to do something for someone else, it will get done. If I have to do something just for me, I won't ever do it. Because we were having that weekly meet-up, and I think that's what we're trying to do with the, like, female comedy collective thing or whatever that turning into.
I was very confused about that, because I joined it. I have no idea what's happening.
I think everyone's confused, but I think what it is like trying to have a space where you can kind of sort out comedy, but not in doing things on your own in quite a linear way is actually quite a patriarchal term of education. Whereas, like, if you're going to look at, like, feminist approaches to education, it would be more collective traditionally.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always arguments against it, and it's blurry, but there's an argument that you're more better suited towards, because you're often having to do emotional labour for other people, you're more better suited towards, like, feeling like you need to do stand-up in the group and doing it for the group and building it up within other people there. Not the case. I'm just saying, it's like a very generalised.
No, we should. We should even
complex.
just do like, I know I always have Tuesdays off, but for a while there was like a group meeting on Soho Theatre on a Tuesday evening.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Okay, never mind.
No, but then that will make you do the work.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, I have to have it on a meeting. I don't have to perform definitely, but there's a chance that I will. The work will come out.
Yeah, it makes me feel so sick, the whole idea of getting up there and then
do it, and you love it, and then you love it for the next few days, and then you're like, I never want to do it again.
Yeah. But that's kind of addictive. I think a lot of performers are like that. Isn't there, who was saying this, that there's a bunch of people that still perform comedy and beforehand they're like,
I hate it and I want to throw up.
Yeah,
I got really bad sleep, right? After we did that, I like fell asleep for like a week or something.
Oh my god, that's mad. Yeah, so do you have any like future plans of where you'd like to be this time next year? Or
no.
No,
I do want to do, so I do research in narcissism in performance. Have I told you that? I can't remember.
No, not specifically narcissism.
Yeah, so I've already written stuff up about narcissism.
Oh my god, I would have been a lot more careful had you
No, because there's like the people always like, oh, how are you doing that? There's good types of narcissism, so it's actually like a really useful thing, because it's about like acknowledging that it's good for us to feel special about ourselves, and that's like the human state being happy. like kind of unrealistically happy, but that's what humans are. That's our
Yeah.
healthy point. So I researched that, and then I'm looking at other factors of the dark tetra called, which is like psychopathy, sadism, and Machiavellianism, which I can't say, and I can't spell. But yeah, I'm looking at that in terms of performance. So I definitely want to go on and do more research. I don't really understand how I work as a stand-up yet. I definitely like having a voice on stage and having something to say. I don't like writing for me, and I like seeing it in other people, but just for me, I don't like stand-up that doesn't have a purpose to it for me. Yeah, so I'm trying to work out what that is, but I don't know where that's going to be in like a year's time. Probably dating another comedian being like, I hate this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get so like, what is it about job titles? But when I was younger, I was actually, this is part of my set, you know, I wanted to date a farmer.
Yeah.
And then I had my electrician
I grew up
phase.
around farmers, but I have a very different dialogue. Like, they were stupid, man. Other than the one farmer I know actually quite well. He's really smart, but yeah.
Oh yeah, have you had much feedback since you've been performing?
I have, but from you know who.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like,
No, they said it was really good.
how? What? No, like
the video.
the video. Well,
Yeah.
hey, amazing.
Yeah, I enforced that. No, I didn't. I just said, do you want to see it? Yeah, that's about it. I refuse to show people close to me just because of what I'm talking about.
Did you have that video online?
No.
Okay, yeah, no.
I've wondered about maybe showing like 2 seconds of it, but whether that being like actually useless, because I can't show any of it.
It's so difficult, I suppose, when you're a teacher. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Like I have to be really careful sometimes.
I might post mine, but I really hated it. I really hated
Really?
it. And then,
I loved yours.
thank you. Then I showed my family, and they were like, "You're being self-critical."
Yeah, but everyone's always worse on themselves.
Yeah. All I could see was like everything I forgot.
Sometimes I worry if I like the idea of me as a stand-up more than I like doing the stand-up.
It's tough because half
I
the
just-
people I interviewed with this talked about what they learned from bombing, and like the thing is, anytime something's gone badly, I've been like, maybe this isn't for me, but like so many of them say, oh well, if you're not bombing, you're not trying enough stuff.
Oh yeah, but that doesn't mean it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I don't. But yeah, but then people always have like a masochistic approach to like, it's like actors the same, you know, like you got to get through all these like painful auditions, and it's like, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm questioning that a lot. Like, I'm questioning what's worth the pain. Because you can lose like years of your life to trying to do something and hating it all, and then what's the point? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you.
I would rather just be happy.
But do you think some jobs are like,
happy.
they're kind of like toxic relationships? Like,
Yeah.
what is
oh
it?
God,
Yeah.
especially in performance world, yeah.
But then people kind of okay it because it's a career.
I think people get attached. It happens in different ways. So some people sometimes, well, I argue some people use performance work to distance themselves from their current problems. Sometimes, not all the time, but I have seen that quite a lot where it's like, I'm not going to deal with this till I'm famous, and it's like, that is not a good approach to sorting your issues out. Comedians seem to do that a lot as well. Yeah, and some people do it because like that was where they got praised in their upbringing. I'm talking about people who like don't also just love it, because
Yeah.
when you do get, so when you do like train lots of people, you do get, and they're great to work with the people who genuinely just love doing the thing, and that's like always the healthiest reason to be doing it. And then you get people who've like come into it because they're dyslexic, and then that was how they kind of could find themselves, or because it's kind of in the right area of what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would stand up with me at the minute. Like, it's kind of in the right area. Like, I definitely like doing the comedy and finding myself as a comedian. I just don't quite know where I actually am with that and who I actually am in that. Like, am I just a straight stand-up, or am I actually an improviser, really? Or I don't know. Oh man, I've forgotten what you asked now. Sorry.
If some jobs are as toxic,
Yeah.
like, or do people okay it because it's a job, you know?
Yeah, they do. But we also have a very unformatted form of working, unstructured form of working, where when you study like abusive patterns, because that's part of what I've studied in the past, they call it like, it's almost like, it's in criminology studies, it's almost like the middle ground of abuse. So the reason I studied this was because of like the Harvey Weinstein stuff and things like that. And you get these big instances of abuse that come from these middle acceptances of abuse. So we have fashions for abusive behaviour. So if you look at like James Bond and like The Wolf of Wall Street, those are like arguably fashionable forms of abuse. That exists in the whole of life. But when you have a really open structure, comedy's particularly bad because you guys kind of go away, work stuff on your own, then you meet in this high intense pressure. atmosphere, and then you go back. So like, you know, slight sayings and things seem to get held up as being like these really, you know, this person said this one thing about me, they're clearly X, Y, Z, and it's not real. So when you have that open state, it's a lot, the swings and roundabouts of those kind of like natural ways in which humans kind of do bad things, they get a lot worse. It is partly just because there's no way in which we can kind of hold you know, you can't be like, in 5 years time I'm going to be at this point in my comedy career. It doesn't work like that. So there's none of that safety net. So yeah, it is, but it's also a factor of just not having structure in place. But there's a lot of benefits from it. You get a lot of really good people because of that as well.
I would say, like, I met so many amazing people on this course.
Yeah, you meet incredible people, you meet incredibly bad people. Yeah.
And so many people are doing really amazing things. Like when I was...
Yeah. You're like, what? You never said this.
Yeah. Oh my god. I love with our group in general, there's just a lot of like strong women.
Yeah. I think you get that in comedy a lot though. Like, I think maybe I find myself with the comedy women more. Yeah. When I find myself in spaces, like, even if they don't even mean to be, where it's like slightly kind of that like competitive male thing, I just find myself being like, oh, I'm out. Like, this is not my happy space. Yeah. Is
there anyone you're watching that you're like,
you love
what they're
Brady.
Doing? Oh, really?
I love Fern Brady so much. And she comes out and she's so I don't. Sorry, my parents are divorced and I grew up in a council estate, and I also grew up in like quite a nice house in the countryside. Fern Brady is so the council estate from Scotland, and I love that about her. Like, and that's really, maybe I shouldn't say that, but yeah, no, she's really quick and really funny and really smart, and that was what I spent a lot of time growing up with, and I really love having that back in my life.
I've not seen her yet, unfortunately.
She's really good.
Yeah. So many people love her. Like,
yeah, she's really hot at the minute, and so is Kerry Pritchard McLean. I also love May. Is it May Martin?
Yeah.
I love Alex Edelman. I always just find his comedy really smart.
You're going to see a couple of shows like the next couple of months, right?
Yeah, Kima Bob. I really love Kima Bob, but
I very, very stupidly, like, they had the Black Friday sale, and I very stupidly didn't get it.
Yeah,
I thought if I got into the next course, I would get like the discount tickets or whatever.
I know people who still use the discount tickets somehow.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'll hit you up with who uses them.
I really, really want to see Sarah Keysworth and
definitely
Helen Bauer.
I'm seeing Tom Mayhew next week. Yeah, I've not seen Janine Harouni.
Oh, she performed at the all-female comedy night.
Yeah.
Called Nasty. Anyway, she opened it and she's so good. She's amazing. But she's so, like, clean cut, so she did, like, a perfectly rounded 15-minute set.
Yeah, I feel like I need that in my life. I just don't have my own... I haven't worked out how I do that yet.
Yeah, like, when you have something... Like, I suppose I would bring mine back every so often to road frontage, where, like, I start off with road frontage, and then I end with, you know, something with, I don't know, whatever, some similar topic, like a 5, 10, 15-minute version. It's so exhausting. Yeah,
there seems to be something in the way that you structure comedy, and developing that to a certain point is not actually correlative with you necessarily being a really good comedian, but it's helpful. So if I was to analyse, I would definitely split it up between how you perform on stage and then how you develop a kind of score for your comedy.
I don't know. I just don't know why I found it so interesting you said score.
Yeah, it's like a music score.
Yeah.
So you play off it.
That's so cool. Okay, so 2 questions I always ask in this podcast.
Okay.
First one is, what advice would you give to your teenage self? Is there something you would change?
Oh my god. Oh, I've been through... Oh, man, yeah. Oh, man, that's a big one.
Yeah.
My teenage self, do you have like an age in mind?
Normally I do like focus a bit more on people's childhood, but since you're thinking that you're going to study history, there's normally a changing point, I think, in that you, like, a lot of people had a moment they kind of thought, well, you know, is this for me? Or they had a mentor that changed their life, or, you know, like your sister in this case, I suppose.
I had a really good history teacher. Love my sister, but she's just not getting that credit.
But I think there was there has been like a common theme of moments kind of people thought, like, and a lot of it is really, really simple, like just do it, or, you know, work on your confidence. Or one guy said start working out now so that you feel more confident.
This is a funny one. And I told you this earlier, so I feel like, and I'm trying to talk about it, but it's a weird thing to talk about. So I told you earlier, I almost died when I was 19, and I'm trying to like kind of find a purpose for that, which is stupid because it doesn't actually exist. But I had like the phase of like, you're not there yet, like you're still alive. And for me it's like, telling her that like it doesn't get better. Like, it doesn't, but that doesn't mean there's not a point to it. And I'm so proud of how I just stuck to my guns. Like, I've never, other than going to Birmingham, which was me not sticking to my guns, I should have applied to drama schools and I didn't. But in like all the difficult decisions I've made, I've always stuck to my guns, and I'm really proud of that looking back.
Yeah.
And it's not been easy, and I've been a dickhead to some people because of it, but I'm so proud of that dickhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean by sticking to your guns? Like,
So like when I finished my degree, I just started getting to a point with like friends who I felt weren't nice people just walking away. And I felt like a dickhead, but I just got to a point of like, why are you bothering? A lot of people, when I first went to Central, a lot of people were like, you should go into straight acting, what are you doing? And I was like, no, this is right for me. I walked away a lot from things that should, like, people, socially, that should have been right. Like, you should have done that thing. I'm not very good at relationships, so I walk away from relationships all the time. But when I get into a relationship, it's really good. It's like I get like the two men that I've dated long term, of both, I still think they're both incredible people. So it's that kind of just like, but then people tell me they're not, and there's things like that, and just sticking to like, no, you do know. Yeah, that feeling of like, no, this guy, this situation is right for me. I'm not stupid.
yeah.
Because I used to think I was stupid. And then I did my course, and then I was like, oh no, I'm just smart in this like one way and stupid in every other way.
Oh.
Yeah.
I do find it like, I find it so hard to trust my instincts.
Yeah.
You know, because maybe it was like people were more threatened by someone that knows their own mind.
Yeah, they are. I think knowing your own mind can offend people sometimes. Like, people get really offended by swearing, and my own mind swears a lot. You know, like, I fucking love swearing. Yeah, so people do take offense at it, but I think I've gotten to a point now where it's like, so? I'm not there yet all the time. I do worry about it. I'm like, so, and then we'll go away and still be thinking about it like 6 weeks later, like, oh. Yeah, but yeah, no, that was, yeah.
I get what you mean. We had like this thing with the comedy night in North London, being like, don't let anyone say this word, this word, this word.
Oh, really?
Because
people can't police language.
I know.
Yeah.
Especially in stand-up, and they're doing me like a massive favour by coming to North London. These are like my friends, and it's like it's not a massive venue, so there's no capacity to make much money out of it. So it's more like, for me, the policing of swearing is a very middle class thing. And if you're religious, then I get it. If you're religious, I will and you tell me not to swear around you because it's, you know, an offence to your religion. Like, my need to swear is not above that. Like, that's fine. If you're like a middle class person, and I am middle class, so like, fuck it. But if you're like a middle class person telling someone else not to swear because they want to swear, then you're just being a dickhead. Yeah, I love swearing. My second question is, what story would you tell in Graham Norton's Red Chair?
Oh God, I don't know. There's so many. I get myself into trouble a lot, and it's really good fun. I don't know. Wait. If you're Graham Norton, what would you want to know about?
I'd want to know, I suppose, bombing stories or moments where you've kind of like done something out of the ordinary, or sometimes it's been like people telling the most embarrassing moments of their life, and then others it's just been like one guy had an action figure made about him, and
what?
Yeah, so it wasn't like a cringy story, but it was like, what? Yeah, that was my exact reaction.
My bombing stories are bad. Like, they're like not particularly interesting bombs. They're just like really bad. We had people walking out a lot. In terms of like weird things that happened, I'm weirdly in Little Britain. Just by walking about, yeah. But I was like 7, so it doesn't really count. We used to be one of my favourite stories. I don't know why this one stuck with me, and I probably shouldn't be talking about it because I reckon it's still going on. When I was at Birmingham, I play the drums, and I used to work for the Jazz Society, and we were the front for a drug run. I mean, it wasn't us doing the drug run,
yeah,
but it was a great student deal because what would happen was this pub they'd let us play all the time. They would come and pick up our stuff, which would be like down the road but really heavy. Like, we had so many instruments. I don't know why they'd managed to just buy loads of like really bad instruments over the years. Fair enough, it was great. And then they'd drop us off, and then it would just be dodgy. They'd be like, oh, these men come and help us take the instruments into the place,
Okay.
and we would perform, but I would get free drinks and free food all the time, and as a student it was great. I used to take so many people on dates because I could get us drunk for free, and then they would want to pay, and I'd be like, oh, don't worry about it, and then pretend that I paid because I wouldn't tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just really like that. Yeah. I don't know.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. I once told a lawyer that story, and he was like, he's like, I think you would have been fine if you've never seen anything. And I was like, yeah, I mean, all we did was just not tell the police.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm very out of being cool in that world.
Especially like when I moved to London, but still I'm so like green because my mom's drug and alcohol addiction counsellor.
Oh really?
So
she
terrified me growing up, and I was
my
like,
mum's a midwife.
oh god,
The amount of baby stories.
oh yeah, it's terrifying.
She asked me if I was pregnant the other week because I felt sick. You know, you're just like, no.
Not yet.
I hope not.
Oh god.
Oh yeah, I don't know what I was saying on Graham Norton.
That's a great story.
I have a lot of I've stupidly dated a lot of really not over like Z-list celebrities. Yeah, that's my other one. It's like, I don't know how I keep doing that. But like people before they get to the Z-list status.
Ma.
No. Wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, good.
It was not worth it.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you if they want to keep up with what you're doing?
My social media is a bit weird because I'm a teacher. I sometimes get angry and tweet things at Chloe and Kennedy. My Instagram is very boring. Don't bother with that. Yeah, probably Twitter is the big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow Chloe on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you for having me.